Okay, continuing on in chapter 2. The rise of the state church and its implications. In a very tangible way, the emerging institutionalized church under Constantine, the state church, openly taught the doctrine of Balaam. Making Christianity the state religion did not mean that Constantine was for Christ. Amen. He was for peace in his empire, and his philosophy was, if we can't beat them, we'll join them. If they could not be defeated by the sword through persecution, which just multiplied them, they would be courted, flattered, corrupted, and absorbed. In addition to setting up these hirelings, Constantine brought all the pagans into the religion. The pagans did not have to understand Christian doctrine or even be regenerated to be part of the religion. Constantine converted the pagan temples into churches and made the pagan pantheons of deities into saints, giving them new names. In Catholicism, all the veneration of saints, which often are associated with various powers and charms, comes from the pagan gods that Christianity was brought into contact with, and the Christians were taught to love and receive the unbelieving pagans. Constantine Christianized pagan practices, including forcing baptism on people, to create a unified state religion for the sake of peace in the empire. Pagan feasts were renamed with Christian designations so that pagans could continue their traditions under a Christian guise. Consequently, Christians were brought into contact with these idolatrous practices, thinking they were part of the worship of Christ. God views this as a form of fornication because he is married to his chaste bride, the church. In this way, even God's genuine servants were seduced to commit fornication and eat things sacrificed to idols. The pagan practices and feasts were reinterpreted in the light of Christian doctrine. It is important to understand that the religion of paganism stems from Babel and is directly related to Baal worship. Baal is a false Christ, the hard taskmaster. We will get more into this in subsequent messages. This is the origin of Christian feast days, such as Christmas and Easter. They are pagan holidays dressed in biblical garb. However, if your conscience tells you not to celebrate Christmas, that is fine. Using this knowledge of the origins of these things as an excuse to avoid buying presents for your family may reveal a deeper selfish motive. God is not as offended by outward practices as we might think. Amen. He is offended with Christ being replaced by Baal by false teachers who hate God's people and want to rule over them and bring them into bondage. Christians have the liberty to use worldly elements for the furtherance of the gospel and should not be in bondage over feast days. Amen. The power of demonic influences has been broken for believers. We are not of this world and are not subject to demonic powers in the way some superstitiously believe. However, demons can affect Christians through false doctrine. If you believe a distorted gospel, a demon can oppress you until that truth is corrected. Many people suffer from demonic oppression because they are unclear about the gospel and certain truths. And that does not mean demon possession. It means oppression. Look up the two words and you'll see the difference. I experienced oppression because I believed in an incorrect church authority structure, placing too much authority on the pastor, akin to Moses. This allowed the enemy to damage my conscience and oppress me. Once I understood the authority of the New Testament, the oppression ceased. Our freedom from demons come through understanding the truth, not through abstaining from certain foods or activities. John 8:32. Amen. Not only did Constantine bring the church into a new position of favor, he also handpicked its leaders. Many of these were raised in the church and were familiar with its doctrine, but they were not believers. They were skilled at rhetoric, managing people, and keeping them in line. These individuals were well versed in the outward form of biblical doctrine, but were enemies of God's people, seeking to weaken them. They taught the doctrine of Balaam, peace with God's enemies, and loved their wage of unrighteousness. They were given lavish salaries and estates, which led to lavish lifestyles. They built churches from converted pagan temples. These Baalamite hirelings literally sat on marble thrones. This is several steps beyond the false apostles in Corinth who Paul warned about. Amen.